I want to commend Congresswoman Dean for offering this legislation. As I told her in the sidebar conversation, I think there's a whole lot of overlapping interest in this bill and real opportunity for bipartisan consensus. I know this issue is a personal one for her, and I appreciate her courage for sharing her own son's challenge to help others. I know they've co-authored a book about this together, and it's a real inspiration to everyone and so many Americans who have gone through this very similar struggle. As I told my friend from Pennsylvania, her advocacy for the underlying legislation, connecting housing to the services that are needed, the addiction recovery services, I just can't help but observe that she is making the most compelling case against Housing First. And what is Housing First? Housing First, as defined by the National Alliance to End Homelessness, is, quote, "This is what we mean by Housing First, that homelessness is a problem with a solution, and the solution is housing, period, for everyone, whether you follow the rules or not, whether you are compliant with treatment or not." Now, that is a model. Sometimes it might work, sometimes it might not. But there is another model. And the other model out there is the model that's followed by the organization that Congresswoman Dean's son works for, which is CAREN, the Clinical Services for Drugs and Alcohol. CAREN inpatient treatment is decidedly not Housing First, because the inpatient treatment is integrated fully with the actual addiction recovery services. And one needs only go to the website of this organization and hundreds, if not thousands, of other organizations, wonderful organizations that literally save lives, that exist in every single congressional district in America. But what is the one thing that those organizations have in common? They are categorically ineligible for HUD homelessness assistance, because they integrate housing with addiction services. So in the findings of this bill, my colleague makes several connections between the link between experiencing homelessness and behavioral health issues, including substance use disorder. The findings are many individuals with substance use disorder who experience homelessness have co-occurring illnesses. The combined effect of physical illness, mental illness, and lack of housing results in higher mortality rates for individuals experiencing homelessness. And critically, subsidized housing is critical, but not enough. That is the language in the findings of my friend from Pennsylvania's legislation. She's absolutely right. Success to additional voluntary person-centered supportive services is needed. I agree with the Congresswoman that subsidized housing is not enough. A recent study from UCLA found that 75% of unsheltered homeless have substance abuse disorders, 78% have mental health conditions, and 84% have physical health issues. The root causes of homelessness are much deeper than simply a lack of shelter, and we need to do more to help people. So I would love to work with her on this issue, particularly because currently Housing First policies at HUD completely cut off funding for housing providers that require supportive wraparound services. Both Democrats and Republicans in this room have service providers with excellent track records in their districts who cannot access HUD funding to expand the work they're doing. Each member on the Housing Subcommittee heard from the Doe Fund, located in New York City just a few months ago, about the success they have had in housing homeless individuals and requiring them to perform paid work. Yet still they are barred from receiving a single federal grant because their program includes job placement and workforce training. And that's the fallacy of making Housing First the housing-only policy. We should be rewarding success in transforming the lives of our nation's homeless, not enforcing a one-size-fits-all doctrine. Allowing non-Housing First providers, including the provider of Congresswoman Dean's son, to receive federal funding wouldn't result in people getting turned away from housing. It would simply result in more homeless service organizations being able to compete for federal funding and more homeless individuals who will be helped back on their feet. My amendment would allow that by reserving at least half of the funds for use by organizations that provide shelter and improve the lives and livelihoods of their clients, completely effectuating the intention of the author of the bill, connecting housing with the services. And I urge its adoption. And by the way, it's why I've introduced my legislation the Housing Plus Act that we cannot get into a markup. And so I would, beyond this bill, I offer to work with my friend from Pennsylvania to combine her idea with this Housing Plus concept. And I yield back.